In this lesson, we're going to look at what happens when we transform data. What happens to the different measures that we use to describe that data, measures of center or measures of spread? Well, by transformation we mean what happens if we add or subtract to every value in the data set, or what happens if we multiply or divide every value in the data set by the same value? Well, let's actually practice using some data that we've stored already. So enter the NFL scores from week 1 of the 13-14 season. Put these in list 1 by executing this command on the home screen. The points list should already be stored on your calculator. So if I go to my calculator, if you press second stat, that will take you to all of the lists on your calculator, and you want to scroll down to find the points list. Now on my calculator, I have all kinds of lists that you might not have. That's fine. I'm just going down to the list that says PTS. There it is. I'll press enter to select it, and I'm going to store that back into list 1. And I'll press enter. So if you don't have that data for whatever reason, I will give you a snapshot of the data. So what I would do at this point, I would pause the video at this point. Here, these are the values. These are the 32 scores from the first weekend of the 13-14 NFL season down here. These are the values that you need to get into list 1. So you could pause now, put them into list 1, and then start again. All right, so the first thing I want you to do is run the one variable stats command on list 1, and we'll round to the nearest 10th. So what this is going to do is give us all of our summary statistics. And I will copy them down here. Again, we're going to go to the nearest 10th, so some of these should look familiar. The center is about 23.2 points. That's our mean. The median, if I scroll down to get the median, the other measure of center, that's 23.5 points. The standard deviation, I'll scroll up. The standard deviation is right here. It's about 9.5. The range isn't listed on the screen, but you can calculate it. It's the difference between the maximum and the minimum, so that's 47. And then the IQR, that's just the difference between Q3 and Q1, so that's 11. So these are our summary statistics. So let's pretend then that for whatever reason, every team actually scored an additional touchdown that weekend, including the extra point. So to save this info so that we can work with it, we're going to put this into list 2. This is the command that I want you to execute on the home screen. So we'll take every value in list 1, we'll add 7, and we'll put it into list 2. This is a transformation of the data. I'm going to clear this. So here's list 1. I will add 7, so every team gets an extra touchdown and an extra point. That's an additional 7 points. And we're going to store that then into list 2. This is a transformation of the data. We've transformed every NFL team's score by adding 7 to each value. So that transformation, what I want you to explore is, does that transformation affect the measures of center? Does that transformation affect measures of spread, and if so, by how much? So to make those observations, all we need to do now is run the one variable statistics command on list 2, and then we can compare. So I'll press stat and calc. Here's the one variable statistics command. I'm going to change my list to list 2. So again, if you have a calculator that doesn't show this menu, what you have to do is call up the one variable stats command. So it will say one variable stats on the screen. And then right next to it, you have to press second 2 to get list 2 onto the one variable stats command. Again, I'm going to list them. So our new mean is 30.2. So if I scroll down, I can get our new median. The new median is 30.5. So the standard deviation I can still see, it's 9.5 up there at the top. The range, if I scroll down, the new max is 56, the new min is 9, and the difference between 56 and 9, that is 47. And the IQR Q3 is now at 35, Q1 is now at 24, their difference is 11. And now it's time to go compare. So notice the measures of center. Take a look at those. Now notice the measures of spread. Hopefully you notice something here. If we add the same value to each entry of the data set, this is what's called a horizontal shift in algebra. A horizontal shift to the right would be adding to each value. A horizontal shift to the left would be subtracting from each value in the data set. Adding the same value to each entry of the data set, it increases the measures of center by that value, but it does not affect the measures of spread. The measures of spread stay the same. And there's a reason for that, but the best way to observe that is to actually graph it. So something to think about. Measures of center are affected, so are measures of position. For instance, even the minimum or the maximum was affected. Those are the extremes, or Q1 and Q3. Those are the values at the first quartile and the third quartile. Those are specific positions within the data set. All of those values, in this case, are shifted to the right by factors of by 7 units, by 1 full touchdown and an extra point. But none of the measures of spread were affected. So first of all, I want to have you set your window. So have you set your window to a minimum of 0, a maximum of 100. Make the x scale 5. Make the y minimum -3, the maximum 12, and make the y scale 1. So I'll give you a second to do that. But what we're going to do now, instead of using histograms, what we're going to do is use box and whisker plots so that you can actually see the horizontal shift. You can see that all of the measures of position have changed, including the measures of center. But the data points are no more spread out than they were before, so the measures of spread don't change. So here we go. If you press second and y equals, we're going to go into the first plot. My guess is many of you already have it turned on. If you don't, you should highlight on. Press the down arrow, and now you have to press the right arrow in order to cycle through all of the type options, and choose this option right here, the one that looks like the little box and whisker plot, but it has dots. That's the box and whisker plot option that checks for outliers. This one doesn't. This one does. So I would always use that option. Our data are in list 1. So second y equals, let's actually scroll down to plot number 2. Let's turn it on. If you press the down arrow, let's also select a box and whisker plot, which checks for outliers. And then this time, though, I want to look at the data after the touchdown has been added. So in the X list, I'm going to change that to list 2. Now I'm going to press the graph button. So look, you can see the horizontal shift. There is an outlier. It was shifted to the right. That's also the maximum. Notice you can see the shift in the median. There's the shift in Q3. Here's the shift in Q1. Here's the shift in the minimum. But notice the measures of spread, of course, you can't see the shift in the mean, but the measures of spread here haven't changed. You can see that the IQR is the same. You can see that the range from max minus to min is the same. Of course, you can't see the standard deviation by looking at box and whisker plots, but that calculation also remains the same. All of the values have shifted to the right by 7, but their positions relative to each other have not changed because they all went up by 7. So how spread out they are, that spread has not changed whatsoever. So the measures of spread, the range, the IQR, the standard deviation, they remain the same. So if you watch the next video, we're going to look at what happens if instead of adding or subtracting to the data set, let's look at what happens if you multiply.